Chapter 2. Nervous System 1. Brain Plus. Right Hemisphere. The preparations are laid out in an almost meticulous precision. The outside furniture is swept of dried leaves and soggy berries, and the cushions are displayed, bright and vivid like bunches of maraschino cherries. Inside, we pushed the dining table against the wall and turned the chairs away to circle it against the wall and window overside. My mum would reach into the drawers and cupboards, pulling out bowls and bags of crisps and nuts, filling the dishes with pile of savouries, pinching one to taste, opening a clear plastic bag of tortilla chips, and circling around on the dish, around where the small jar of salsa lies unopened, ready to be ravaged and dipped. My dad fighting with the Bluetooth soundbar, the TV in the bar bleeping in retribution, until, after fiddling with the buttons and the phone, the music starts to pour. Poured, like our drinks, I partially fill a cup with pink gin, then fill to the top with lemonade, fizzing up to the edge, before falling back down again. I sit down stuck in limbo, stuck in the infinite space before a party, where you are ready, but no one is here. My sister sits in her room, for she doesn't care about parties, and my dad lines up all the bottles on the countertop, ready to show off his collection, while my mother, in one busy last push, does a final sweep with the hoover, under tables and chairs, and up the carpet on the stairs. We stay in limbo until the doorbell rings. Once I run to open the door and welcome them in, the party starts. Once the sky has turned a deep shade of maroon, our heads lighter from all the drinks, my dad switches the heater on, and the talk slowly turns from small talk, anecdotes and funny stories, to something more serious. And I see my family turned into the groups of people I recognise clearly. Within this setting, I see my mum fall back to listen to her family, while they seem to explode with their conversation. With my Auntie Heidi, I see her emotions fill her body. I see it in her wide eyes. I see it in the edges of her fingertips when she waves her hands around. I see her need to purge everything she feels out of her body through her raised voice, and we let her. We sit around in a circle, listening to the song that was played at his funeral. For a while, we sit in almost silence, absorbing it while Heidi sobs for her brother, and there is nothing that we can say to her except that it wasn't her fault and that he is in a better place now. I don't know if that is true, but I hope that she believes it to be true. I see her pour out her tears, breathing through them until it is all that is left in the air, and it hangs between us. Then Dancing Queen plays, and all of us, Heidi too, are up and out of our chairs and moving in almost euphoria. Our eyes heavy with drink, stare deep into each other's eyes, and we move our bodies and sing along to all the words, and we forget the emotions we knelt deep, knee deep in before and dance. I knock back more gin from my jug and take some shots with my aunts and cousins, and we dance some more. Some leave earlier, my uncle pouring himself over the garden fence and falling down the other side before stumbling home, and we keep the music on. But I get an idea. I pull out my easels, my mind heavy from the drink, and laughing, I put up 2 canvases. I get Heidi and my cousin to pick paints and colours and begin filling the space. Pinks, blues, purple, cerulean, green azure, black and white. I guide them in the naive painting, while my dad creates weird cocktails, strong like a bull, and pulls them down our necks, while we giggle like children, playing with the crayons and drinking Capri Suns. Falling around the room, we clumsily sign our paintings and hang them to dry on the wall above where the piano used to be, and the bongo that Heidi played so furiously earlier in the night that it broke with a deep thump Calling a taxi, they bundle out the front door, while my mother stacks cups into the dishwasher, throwing leftover nuts and crisps into the bin in an almost meticulous precision that started the night with, while I work my heavy body up the stairs to bed. Left hemisphere. There is a picture, stuck into the countless bound tomes, a wide array of coloured covers stuffed like sardines into the shelves down by the sofa. In that picture stands a boy, frozen in blue ice. He wears blue pyjamas and stands in a room of blue walls. His covers on his bed are blue, his carpet too. His favourite toy was a blue bear, or Boo Bear, because that child couldn't wrap their tongue and lips around the L sound. He stands like a soldier in front of his bed, his army of stuffed toys displayed in 2 straight lines atop and below the radiator that stands between the bed and the wall. The boy standing proudly as to proclaim, "Look how organised my room is, Mummy." Now, the room stands in disarray, and the only cleaning seems to be pushing crowded sketchbooks and paints across the splattered desk, or picking up socks and pants from the floor and dumping them into the wash basket next to the stairs. The room is no longer a wash of cold and royal blues. The carpet's ripped up, and walls painted grey and turquoise. Those lined-up toys sold in long-forgotten car boot sales for change on grey Sunday mornings, or tossed away in deep cleans over the years. The person who stands now is tired and weary, as they prepare to leave the room to open the door as the bell rings through the house. Let in, and with wine in hand, we sit upon a hastily made bed, the black covers crinkling and creasing, as we sit upon them with our backs against the radiator wall. We pop the cork and fill our glasses. The blue boys sat, drowning their blues with wine, their head reeling with anxieties to the point where all thoughts blur together at a speed where none can be distinguished, wearing up a vacuum, so all feeling, including fear, are sucked away, and all that remains is the sound of Zelda on the TV, like how we played that week that my nan died, as I watch a small man move through a grass field, checking my phone occasionally, the last text going, "Any updates?" I tell my friend about how I was awoken that morning, with my dad shaking me awake, telling me that he was taking my mother to A&E. With a ping, I receive a message from my dad. There is something causing a blockage, and she will have to stay in hospital for a while, but it's getting sorted, and it isn't cancer. So I come to the resolution that it can't be all that bad. It could be anything. We've been through worse. And I have friends. And wine. Thalamus. I can imagine my granddad starting each day by getting right up and out of bed, tending to his daily routine as a soldier would perform his tasks. A coffee, some toast, or a breakfast biscuit, sitting in his chair, reading one of his 100 books about planes, or trains, or a war. Surrounded by toy machines and automobiles, stripping each part of his and his wife's house until it resembled only his interests. Trains on the coffee table, cars on top of the TV stand, pictures of the grandkids and infants moved to make space for a new set of shelves to hold his planes. All that was left of my nanny remained in a framed picture under the window, a cabinet of her trinkets and tchotchkes next to the dinner table, and her handbag on the chair. That was all that was left of her at the time, except her, living at the care home just down the road from our house, where my granddad would walk across town every day in the morning to make a tea, sit, talk, to give pills, then leave, telling her he will see her at the same time tomorrow. On his return home, he would buy himself the daily paper and say hello and speak to whoever he would pass. As a child who would often walk with their grandparents, it was incredible to see how often we would have to stop when my granddad would see a set of people he would recognise and have to catch up with, explaining each minute detail of his and the rest of his family's lives, such as Eloise is now in middle school, or yes, Heather isn't going to university, or no, she is in a home now because her Alzheimer's has progressed that far. And they would reply too, with information they had, such as when they had seen us last, or that a friend from school had died. As a child who was dead set on their journey, having to halt in the street or in the aisle of a shop to talk to someone who seemed to already know everything about me, my parents, and my granddad, but whose face I would never recognise, was unnerving. It was an up-close look at how the spread of information would pass around our family and Biggleswade at large, and my granddad seemed to at least be near the centre of it. Many times as a teen, when I would explore the town with my friends, a bag full of alcohol hastily stolen from the cupboard in the dining room, and we would walk around the street, with the feigned confidence attributed to such acts, I would return home to an inquiry about my location, because a friend of Grandad had seen me in Asda, and had seen my Grandad. Then my Grandad, when speaking to my mother that night, spread the information further and further. It was often an anecdote that every time I would leave the house, I would see a member of my extended family, and we would most often, like the evening we all happened to go to Spoons all at the same time, and eventually bundled into a small front room together, overwhelming the room completely with our blood. There was nothing in Biggleswade and in our family that wasn't known by all of us. It was because of this that the night my mother informed us of her illness, she waited to tell anyone anything, partly because of my sister's exams, but also because the second my granddad was told, almost overnight, everyone else in the family and the town as a whole would know. And I saw this overwhelming, that while my mum was in treatment every day or recovering in hospital, my mother's illness dominated heavily the air at home, and the information would become a ticking time bomb for the rest of the town that I was stuck in for the summer between terms at university. After a meal, me and my father left to pick up some snacks at Asda, a day or two after my mum told us about her illness. We were shopping through the aisles when Lorna came up to us, distraught by the information that her granddad had shared with her the night before. I, at that point, was in deep denial. I felt nothing, because I couldn't wrap my head around my mother's own mortality for the first time, and that moment, I felt like I was being attacked with the emotions I wasn't feeling. Lorna, an old woman, hunched and solid, wept before my father and I, while we stood motionless in the frozen food aisles, until she reached into her purse and pulled out tissues, blowing her nose loudly into it, until she clawed back her composure, hugged us, and walked away, her basket of shopping in hand. We continued on commenting, God, that information spread fast. Hypothalamus. Do you have something to tell me? My mum's eyes meeting mine in the rearview mirror, her hands on the steering wheel as she turns the corner and drives down a long road. I shake my head confused, as I push my feet against the chair in front of me, as I wasn't old enough yet to sit in the front. A beat of silence stills, as my mum takes a breath and then continues on. Well, the beaver leader called me earlier and told me that you haven't been joining in during some of the games. She says that you've been hiding in the toilet. Is that true? I break eye contact with my mother as I pull my woggle up and down the neckerchief that hangs around my neck and over my bright blue jumper, rolling the small tube of plastic down the fabric and between my fingers and over them like a ring, then back down the two ends of the fabric. Well, my mum says, turning her body round her seat to meet my gaze again. I shrug and sink further into my seat, staring at my fingers and the plastic within them, staring into them, hoping for an end to this awkwardness. Do you like it? Because you don't have to keep going. still looking down her murmur. I still want to go, but my voice meanders back into my throat, and I stop before I know what I want to say. Another beat of silence, before she pulls up into a parking space under a large tree. Well, we'll talk about it after Beaver's on the way home. As she turns off the engine, and we undo our seatbelts and step out the car. We walk single file down an alleyway lined with thick bushes before turning a sharp corner through a metal gate with the words Scout Hut embossed in chipping white paint, and into a small building full of young boys running round in circles, shouting and laughing, like chirping blue tits in their uniforms. I sign in, then wave my mother goodbye before joining the boys in running around until a whistle is blown and we sit in a circle around a flag, pinned hastily to a wall. We start the night by pulling tables and chairs across the room from their stacked habitat in the corner as we colour in paper boats with crayon that we are preparing to set sail down the river next week. I'm content to sit quietly, colouring, while the other boys sit and laugh around me. But then, the activity is over, and the tables are carried back, and the chairs are pushed against the wall. The games began, where we were instructed to hold each other in a circle around a bin in the centre, and we had to pull each other to crash into it, and those that would be eliminated. It was at this point that I would retreat. I would slip away from the older boys, whisper to an adult that I needed the toilet, then go to the small dirty toilets at the front of the hut, where 20 precarious pegs held up the army of small coats of the boys that were now pulling each other round and screaming loudly. I would then place myself in the small cubicle, lock the door, and sit and wait, until I knew it was too late for me to join in, for I was the youngest, and couldn't seem to make friends with the boys all a year older. So I worked at my anxious artistry, pushing my fingernails and picking off the plaster from the wall in small chips and cracking sheets to reveal the crumbling brick below. I would sit flicking and picking until I heard a whistle, then I would flush the unused toilet, wash my hands, then join the crowd again. On the way home, my mum, working to hide her worry, meeting my gaze again in the rearview mirror, asked me about my evening before saying, I've been asked if I want to be a parent leader at Beavers. It would mean that I would stay and help out each week. What would you think about that? I shrug and say, that might be nice. Okay, she says, as we turn the corner home. Cerebellum. I'll take you out to ride your bike today, my mother says, washing dishes in the kitchen sink as I stand awkwardly in the centre of the kitchen. Yes, please, I say, as I pull on my shorts to pick at the grazed knees below, the skin making way from streaks of red and brown scabs from my failed attempts the day before, the grass stains on the pair of trousers in the wash basket upstairs, a trophy against my victory. Okay, she replies, as she pushes her wet towel against one last bowl and places it to dry next to the sink. Go get your bike then, she says, as I begrudgingly go out the back door and turn the corner to drag up my bike, once slumped against the wall, its pile of orange metal and rubber wheels now fallen to the floor, its kickstand having failed in its job of supporting an upright position. I pick it up and slowly wheel it out the back gate and through the front garden where my dad stands in silent judgment as he waters the plants that circle the bricked ground. Water pours in a turgid manner as he makes eye contact with my mother, who carries my helmet. She opens the front gate for me as I wheel my bike out and pass the house towards the park, where I failed in my attempt the previous day. I couldn't learn this from my dad. I didn't like the way he teaches, resolute that it was easy and that I could do it if only I was brave. He was right, of course, but I couldn't hear it from him. His many attempts to teach me any sport possible, tennis, football, basketball, cricket, all ended in arguments, for I had no interest in them, and soured my ability to learn many things from him, because if he was teaching me, I didn't want to learn it. So it was now my mother's job to hold straight as I pushed the pedals of my bike around the park, round the corner behind the graveyard. I liked how she didn't really say anything. I was able to control it. The support of my mother, the way I held the brakes, my feet on the pedals, my bum on the seat, until I was able to shout at my mother to let go and ride the bike round in circles and ride it without her at all. When we got home, I ran to my dad, sat at the head of the dining room table, eyes gleaming, shouting, "I can ride my bike." He puts down his beer and says, "Well done." As he smiles at me, he pats my head, or what would be my head as I'm still wearing my helmet, as I rode my bike all the way home. He unclips it from round my chin, lifts it up and places it on the table. He looks at my mum as she walks in. "We could go for a family bike ride tomorrow then." As a reward, I get myself a nice lolly from the freezer. We have fabs. Yes. Ponds. Nanny has broken her arm. The text read. I was sat in the hall's kitchen at university. The day before, I was told by the same way of that same group chat that she was unwell and was being sent to hospital. But broken bones were not the same as her angina. I was confused and cut off from the stem of information about my family. I was sat in the kitchen amongst my flatmates, a plate of tuna pasta on the table, a bowl of pesto pasta in another, owned by my flatmate. I wasn't entirely sure what to do. It was the afternoon. Not time enough yet to call my parents, so all I could do was read the storm of messages on the group chat that I could never find a reason to message in, except from wishing a happy birthday or liking a message about plans. That evening, when I phoned my mother, she informed me that she was doing badly. She was refusing treatment. I was very confused. That the night before she'd tried to escape hospital, like a heroine in a prison escape film, and somehow in that process had broken her arm. She said it was bad, and that a referral had been made to put her into a home. I didn't know what to say to that. So I nodded along to the conversation until we ran out of things to say. When it ended, I put my phone on charge and went to sleep. I had to be up early the next morning. I went home for a week during the Easter holidays, and things were remarkably different from when I went home for Christmas a few months prior. I came home from Norfolk after a night out in Caister with my dad, early in the morning. I had a shower, my hair hastily dried, wet dark orange strands sticking against my neck, as I pulled a t-shirt over my head. My mum called from downstairs that Grandad was here, if I still wanted to join her in visiting Nanny. I rushed down the stairs, putting shoes onto my feet and out the door, nervous. When we got to the home, we rang the bell to be let in. A nurse appeared silently, in a powder blue uniform, pressing a button, then walking away, not looking at the three beings asking to be let in. The first thing that hit me was the scent of piss, and it was then that I knew what to expect. When I came back home for Christmas a few months prior, things were still quite normal, or what I viewed as normal with my nan. It took a while for me to realise in my early teens that my nan was slipping away from us. For in reality, she just got quiet. Not that she was the most verbose person, but when we would see her, she stopped being active participants within conversations, looking through people instead of looking at them, calling me Michael instead of Andrew, or losing her place in conversations. That crept upon us slowly, until at that Christmas time, that was the norm for us. Like when she didn't talk over Christmas dinner and put her after-eight chocolates on her plate, covered it in slimy gravy, and ate it with a fork. The jumps were more submissive, more subtle, less offensive. for sometimes she was still there. She wasn't there in the home that day. We walked through a long corridor into a central sitting area where old people sat like crumbling statues before a television, my mum looking around for Nanny amongst them. My granddad set upon a kettle of boiled water, pouring himself a cup of tea, dunking a tea bag from a jar on the side into the steaming liquid, as he focused on pushing a spoon against the bag at the side of the mug, squeezing all of the tea out of it, before putting it into the bin, taking a sip, and breathing out in relief. Only then does he rejoin us in the centre of the room and ask, "Where is Christine?" We find her roaming a hallway, wearing 2 different sets of Crocs, her hair greasy, and what I notice first is that she looks thinner. Her arm is in a cast and sling. She's wearing a creased shirt and something I don't recognise as a pair of shorts. My mother reaches out to her mother and says hello to her with no reply, until she taps her on the shoulder and gets her attention. "What are you wearing?" my mother asks, pulling at the twisted fabric around her waist, trying to decipher what she's made for herself. They both laugh as 2 sleeves entangle themselves and act as 2 dangling arms below her real ones. "Let's get you changed," my mother says, as she brings her down the corridor into a room that has her name and face printed in big letters stuck on the front. My mother closes the door behind her, as me and my granddad wait outside. My granddad looking around, leaving me waiting to say he is looking for a quiet place to sit. When my mother and Nanny exit the room, my Nanny now wearing a grey pair of sweatpants, my mother gives a bundle of fabric to a nurse tender woman. "I don't know where she got these." We sit down in the small room, the light bright through several large windows. I ask what she was wearing. 2 men's shirts, my mum says in an almost laugh. I laugh as well. I didn't know what else to do. The spinal cord. Between the side of the sofa and the wall, under honey-coloured wood, are a million trapped children, frozen like Han Solo in the carbonite. Trapped, smiling face against smiling face, between thin and shining plastic covers. They are bound and tightly packed under the honey-coloured wood shells and countertop, stuffed next to my mother's blanket, tray, and her extension cord with her array of chargers and plugs. They lay untouched, their spines never creasing, their numbers never rising, the people stuck within them never dying, never fading, their smiling faces alien and unfamiliar as the memory of that day faded away. I tried to dig for them in the deep recesses of my mind, but that day, as regular as the rest, is lost to me. Except for the exception. For those days that exist within the spines and the many pages of those books, where the day lives within a single small staged picture, the memory twisting to exist within the confines of the image, where I am not the taken, but the voyeur. I watched the little boy I once was live a life that I remembered him living. Summer holidays, first days of school, beavers, family parties, real memories contorting to fit a framed image that will stay forever, that will never fade, and live outside my mind, down the sides of the sofa, in the living room, in my childhood home.